Hello, and welcome to day 4 of 21 Days to Solstice. I'm Coleen Renee, spiritual teacher and healer, and I welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we are going to talk about archetypes. What are they, and how do I get some? This is a journey that we're taking together in these 21 days of connecting to our inner light, our inner knowing, particularly around feminine expressions. And expressions is a simple way of saying archetypes. Archetypes are those innate abilities within all of us to act from. And it can be as simple as, the archetype of the mother or the father, of the daughter, of the queen. So these are ways of expressing our human nature, and they lie within each of us. So where do you get them? It's in that inner light. So today I would like to talk particularly about the daughter and the maiden, and focusing on Pollyanna. Today I was going to talk about Coleen, kind of the fierce woman, the fierce feminine. But late last night just came to me in the dream to talk about the maiden, to talk about Pollyanna. If you don't know the story of Pollyanna, Pollyanna is a movie. And in the movie, Pollyanna is an orphan whose mother and father died, and they were missionaries in Africa. And her early life, her early daughter, she was really quite treasured. And the essence of the daughter archetype is that knowing that you are the center of somebody's world, and that you really can, if you wish, you can wrap them around your little finger. And this is not a thing of manipulation, it's a thing of just knowing that you're loved and treasured, and allowing that to move through your life. And so if you have that sense, then you also have the sense of, if you have a need, of course, those who love you, or those in the world really, will meet that need. So that's the archetype of the daughter. And it's important to kind of know that Pollyanna had that experience as a young girl in Africa with her missionary parents. And so when they die, she is sent to live with her aunt, who is rather a powerful woman in town. And this takes place in New England. And she is rather rigid and strict, and has this incredible sense of over-responsibility for everyone in the town and for the village. Her family came from money, and from that money was this sense of needing really to take care of everyone. And in this over-responsibility, she actually begins to take choice away from them. And this is actually another archetype, the queen, and the queen in some imbalance. But we're not talking about that today. Today we're talking about the maiden. And the maiden is this wonderful archetype, this knowing that as I move out in the world, I actually can make choices. I can express myself. I can do things the way I wish to do them. And a typical maiden thing is deciding to wear 2 different color socks, just because you want to, and that must be okay. And, maidens are not generally in your face. It's just that sense of some autonomy. And this comes from, again, having that treasured daughter experience, and then moving out into the world, moving beyond that inner circle, and finding your feet, finding who you are and where you belong. And in The Wheel of Transformation, which is a wonderful book written by 2 midwives, and I referenced that in the blog post, so go ahead and take a look at that if you want that reference. There's a wheel of archetypes, and the queen and the maiden are opposite each other, and all of the archetypes that are opposite each other are actually reflections of each other. So the queen is a more mature version of the maiden. So Pollyanna comes to this town, and overall it's kind of a grumpy, sour town. Everyone is a little upset and just kind of unhappy. And Pollyanna introduces to them the Glad game. And this was a game that her father taught her because one Christmas, what she really, really wanted was a doll. And when they received the box from, churches back home, it was this big box full of things, and there was no doll, but there was a pair of crutches. And Pollyanna was heartbroken, and she cried. The daughter didn't get what she wanted. And this was one of those first moments where, she realizes the world really doesn't revolve around her. And again, she was brokenhearted. And her father took her aside and said, "I'm sorry you didn't get your doll. But you did get crutches. And, one thing that we can really be glad of is that you actually don't need the crutches." And together they created the Glad game. So when things were difficult, what they learned to do was look for what to be glad for. So Pollyanna comes into this New England town, and she begins to introduce to them the Glad game. And at first, they're really like, "Little girl, go away. You don't know what the real world is like." But she persists, because the maiden does persist. She has this knowing, and she's able to walk in it. And she persists, and she keeps introducing the Glad game. And over time, they begin to warm to it, and they begin to find hope in it. And in the movie, in a fairly short time, I think it's like a season, she actually transforms this town by introducing them to the Glad game. And it's not just about introducing it to them, like, here's a game to play. She lives it. And she's always looking for ways to be glad. So I introduce this archetype, this expression of the feminine, because it is, again, about relationship. And as you move into relationship and deep relationship, that's where you find that access, that ability to find the glad, to find the silver lining, to look for what will really serve you rather than spending your time looking at what is not working. So Pollyanna offers the Glad game to you today, and I hope that you will give it a shot. Take some time, and Matt Kahn, who's a spiritual teacher, and actually should have been included on my list of males who rock the feminine. But Matt Kahn, in his most recent talk, actually talks about this Pollyanna approach. And he talks about it in terms of anchoring the positive. And that if there's something that you want in your life, to speak it out, but anchor it, and anchor it in gratitude. And, I'm grateful I can find the silver linings. I'm grateful that I have enough to eat. I'm grateful that I have people I love in my life. I'm grateful that I'm alive. And that as you use this language of gratitude and really, focusing it on what it is that you wish. I am light. I am grateful. That it begins to, as it anchors into you, it begins to draw to you those experiences to support it. And that's really what Pollyanna is doing in the Glad game, is anchoring this positive approach so that good things come to her. It's a wonderful movie. If you have the time and you can find it, it's kind of an old movie. And one of the reasons I really like Pollyanna is because, when I was young, and sometimes when we're young, people don't take us seriously. And I was often, chided and said, "Don't be a Pollyanna." And in the last 10 years, I've really looked at that and I'm like, why would I not want to be a Pollyanna? She changed the town, and she changed it for the better, and she did it from a place of love and compassion. So embrace this particular feminine way of expressing this feminine archetype in the next day or so, and just see how that goes. The holiday season, no matter what tradition, it's generally filled with a sense of wonder and a sense of hope. So let that archetype come forth. It's a perfect time of year to be in wonder, to test your where you want to put your feet, and just kind of do things the way that makes sense to you, touching in that inner knowing. Okay, that is all for today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.